We played in front of 500,000 people.
When it was still the Soviet Union.
When it was still the Soviet Union.
And this is still when the Soviet Union was, quote Ronald Reagan, the evil empire.
Soviet missile threat. They are the focus of evil in the modern world.
Police, military, and that helicopter would come down close, and they were yelling at people like, "Stop! This is chaos!"
And whether it's 1 million people, 1.5 million,
it was a sea of Russian people.
On September 28, 1991, at least 500,000 people, and some claim up to 1.6 million, stormed a nearly abandoned military airfield on the outskirts of Moscow, in what was then the dying Soviet Union. And this wasn't a protest, though there was a military coup involved, and we'll get to that too. This was for a rock and heavy metal concert. And that's not even the most astonishing part. The government deployed 12,000 troops, including soldiers and police, the equivalent of a full military division, all in an attempt to contain the chaos. But it was impossible. How did monsters of rock in the Soviet Union turn into something that looked like an open battlefield? The answer isn't simple. You have to understand the political context. The collapse of a crumbling empire, years of control, relentless propaganda, and decades of repression. That had a direct impact, and eventually, it had to explode. Metallica arrived in the capital of their Cold War enemy Moscow, along with AC/DC, Pantera, and the Black Crowes. For decades, the two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union, stood on the brink of nuclear war. And just as the Cold War was coming to an end, Western amplifiers shook the capital of the Eastern Bloc. On September 28, 1991, at the Tushino airfield, more than 500,000 people, some sources say up to 1.6 million, attended the Soviet edition of the Monsters of Rock Festival. This all happened less than 25 kilometers from Red Square, right where Stalin once ruled the empire with an iron fist. Heavy metal is enormously popular in the USSR. If one counts the rock-oriented street graffiti in big cities, the Beatles and Depeche Mode would probably win. But AC/DC would definitely come in third, followed by Metallica and Slayer. Just like everywhere else, an average heavy metal fan in this country is a 16-year-old male who probably comes from a working-class background. This was written by Artemy Troitsky, a Russian journalist and music critic who covered the event for Western outlets. Thanks to the cameras of director Wayne Isham, we also have full audio-visual documentation. Today we can still watch the performances by Metallica, Pantera, and AC/DC, as well as the festival documentary. In August 1991, after a failed coup attempt in the Soviet Union, the idea emerged to hold a music festival in the heart of the empire, in Moscow. There were dreams of bringing in bands like the Rolling Stones, Peter Gabriel, or Bob Dylan to one of the city's central plazas, but due to lack of time, political instability, and expectations of a very small turnout, the artists started dropping out, if they were ever confirmed to begin with. The concert became a problem for the shaky government of Mikhail Gorbachev. He was the same leader who had just survived that coup. But his government, like the USSR itself, was on borrowed time.
Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
The Berlin Wall had fallen in 1989. The Baltic states had already broken away. And although the August 1991 coup had failed, Boris Yeltsin had effectively seized power in Russia. How could a weakened Soviet government possibly fulfill its promise to the students? Then, a light appeared at the end of the tunnel. Time Warner knew the Soviet government was in trouble, and it saw an opportunity. Throughout the Cold War, there had been little to no official distribution of Western music. But with change in the air, this was now seen as a chance to build goodwill with the Soviet regime and break into a market of 280 million people. Time Warner proposed bringing the Monsters of Rock Festival to Moscow. This was a legendary rock and metal festival held annually in Castle Donington in the UK. By 1991, it had already expanded to other European cities, with AC/DC and Metallica headlining. That summer, while Monsters of Rock was touring across Europe, a coup attempt was brewing in the USSR. Key figures like Boris Yeltsin and various sectors of society, including a group of students, resisted it. And this part is crucial. The festival was born out of that resistance. As a symbolic reward for their bravery, those students were promised a free concert with Western rock bands. Metallica drummer Lars Ulrich would later say it was a show that came together literally in just a couple of weeks. Brian Johnson of AC/DC recalled that they were in Barcelona when a message came from Boris Yeltsin. "You must come to Moscow. The coup is over. We made a promise to our kids."
El macroconcert Monstres del Rock, que aquest vespre s'està fent a l'Estadi Olímpic de Montjuïc, ha congregat uns 50.000 joves vestits amb texans cenyits, camisetes dels seus ídols de la música heavy, botes militars i cabells llargs vinguts amb
The
autocars
European
de tot
tour was
l'estat
supposed to
espanyol.
end in Barcelona on September 24, 1991. Regardless of exactly when the call came, AC/DC, Metallica, and the Black Crowes, who didn't play in Barcelona, all boarded a plane to Moscow. Landing wasn't easy. The bands waited up to 3 hours just to clear customs. Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes said they were taken to Red Square at 3 a.m., and there were tanks all over the city. Phil Anselmo, lead singer of Pantera, the last band to arrive in Moscow, remembered passing through a gray, desolate city as Planet Caravan by Black Sabbath played in the background. He said it was a dark but perfect combination. Pantera wasn't originally on the European tour. They were in the studio recording Vulgar Display of Power when the invitation came. Phil Anselmo recalled waking up early to perform at 2 p.m. No one knew who we were, but it was an amazing concert, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. By the time we went on stage, there were already over 700,000 people. According to Artemy Troitsky, Pantera, the first band, which sounded to me like a third-rate Black Sabbath, managed to impress the thirstiest headbangers. Troitsky wrote about Electroshock Therapy, a rather funny local band whose songs are a natural combination of heavy metal and Russian drunken chants. They were technically imperfect, however creates a nice anarchic atmosphere and is loved by the audience. By this point, the airfield looked like a war zone. The show had to be paused to calm things down. Once the full 12,000-strong security force arrived, the event could continue. Then, the Black Crowes took the stage. Chris Robinson recalled that there were at least 300,000 people by then, and that the police were trying to separate the crowd with violence.
I mean, what about it? It's peace, man. It means, like, don't beat on each other with sticks while you're out there.
Even he got hit while looking for a place to pee. He ended up behind a truck, where a soldier pointed a gun at him and literally kicked him out of a restricted area. Troitsky would later write that while the Black Crowes didn't play metal and weren't mature enough for the occasion, he personally liked them. The audience, not so much. By 4 or 5 p.m., the issue wasn't the music anymore. It was the violence. The chief of police shouted, "There are at least 40 people who need to be taken out in ambulances. We have to stop this now." But Western organizers insisted, if we stop the show now, that's when the real violence will begin. According to Troitsky's account, the event was already becoming a full-blown riot. Fortunately, it was all documented. And then, Metallica took the stage. Lars Ulrich would say they were not ready for what was about to happen. Helicopters flew so low it looked like you could touch them. The uniformed soldiers who were supposed to keep order, they were headbanging like the rest of the crowd. Later, James Hetfield recalled, there were police and military. They were standing in their uniforms, and after 3 or 4 songs, they were out there headbanging and having a good time. We saw the transformation of a closed-off society to one of freedom, right before our eyes. Jason Newsted said they witnessed things that would have stopped any show anywhere else in the world, but here, they couldn't stop. They played into the night, only lit by the stage lights. And according to him, people had started arriving days earlier after hearing on the radio that there would be a free concert with Western bands. As Troitsky wrote, thank God the fighting gradually decreased at 6 o'clock and the top bands went on stage. Metallica played an hour-and-a-half long set and was very good indeed. I don't dig the kind of rock the band is playing, but seeing the members walking off stage crawling like boxers after 12 rounds was impressive enough. And then came AC/DC. Brian Johnson said he stepped outside to pee and chose a rusty metal orb as a spot, not realizing it was Sputnik. The soldiers were friendly at first, but could change in seconds. Once on stage, you could see the joy on everyone's faces. Probably half the crowd couldn't hear properly, but no one cared. According to Artemy Troitsky, AC/DC topped the bill and gave people exactly what they wanted, especially when the fireworks exploded. It's also good that most groups didn't talk much about democracy and revolution. One of the big questions surrounding the festival is, how many people actually attended Monsters of Rock in Moscow? To answer that, we need to look at some early estimates. Originally, the festival didn't even have official permission. Everything had been organized too quickly. Later, it received some backing from the mayor of Moscow, who reportedly said, "Let them have their little festival. No more than 100 or 200 people will show up." On their side, the Soviet organizers estimated a crowd of 100,000 to 200,000, based on the Moscow Music and Peace Festival held in 1989. Troitsky noted, masses of kids in metal button jackets invaded Moscow the day before the concert and camped out before the stage. Fans came from all over Russia, Ukraine, and Lithuania. "We don't have nationalistic problems between us," one of the fans said. And they certainly didn't. On the morning of September 28th, they were joined by crowds of teenage Muscovites. But then, how many actually came? Most bands say that by the time Pantera hit the stage, people were already talking about 300,000 attendees. The Western organizers of Monsters of Rock claim between 500,000 and 700,000. Meanwhile, Soviet organizers say it was somewhere between 600,000 and 1 million. Security reports from the Soviet Ministry of the Interior estimated over 1 million people, and some websites go even further, claiming 1.5 million or even 1.6 million attendees. Artemy Troitsky summed up the event as follows. The Monsters of Rock concert had put an end to short-lived post-coup euphoria and the illusion that we are united at last. Perhaps the Tushino event was a great experience for the bands and good for their record labels. For most of us Russians, it pointed to the confusion of these desperate times.